Now let's move our attention to server controls. This gets a little bit confusing. We just looked at HTML controls in the previous video, and now we're talking about ASP.NET HTML controls. And this is a server-side replica of what we know as standard HTML controls. Now in the previous video I didn't mention all the standard HTML controls because I'm making an assumption you're aware of these. The text box, the label, the drop-down list, buttons and all that sort of thing. So we can create a server, an ASP.NET HTML control simply by adding run at server attribute and value to any of the tags that are being used right now. This tells this thing to stop being handled at the client side and to be handled on the server. Now also what run at server actually does in the background is it tells ASP.NET to grab this thing and begin to work it programmatically through the ASP.NET or the .NET framework. Now we can convert any standard HTML control just by adding run at server to it. We also have to give it an ID attribute and we set the name for it, and then we can program against that. Now what does this give us? Well, the main thing that server controls give us is client server-side flexibility, and this is huge. We've not had this a whole lot in web development over the past few years. The developer decides which side handles the events, and this can be easily changed just by removing this information and writing the code where we want it. So we can easily decide where we want this. Now, this includes all standard HTML controls. If it's a standard HTML control, you can do this with it. Now, this is kind of the halfway point between old standard HTML and Microsoft's ultimate ASP.NET attitude about doing web pages. And what you're going to see in the next video is the web controls, and this is where Microsoft ultimately wants you to get with your web development. Keep in mind, server controls are great. They let you have server-side capabilities. Once you add run at server, you can now access different things on the server side of this equation. So keep that in mind. I'm not saying a whole lot about server controls because they're kind of in between. You'll see a fair amount of these out there. But let's go to web controls and take a look at what Microsoft's really wanting you to use in the web environment.